So, Chief, over the last month or so, we've had a number of community conversations, including a conversation with our city council. And we're going to have another conversation soon with our city officials. And I think it's fair to say we've learned a lot in the last month or so, not only through the national scene, but really here at our local level. And that was our goal, was to hear what our community had to say and what ideas they had for racial justice and social equity. Some of the things I took away from the events, I think one of the biggest ones is we had a lot of people out there that want to listen, want to learn, and want to do better in their own lives. And of course, that's key, I think. But then also people asking questions about what we can do at the city level within our law enforcement organization and citywide. And I think what I'd ask of you was what have you heard from the community, or what have been some of your takeaways specific to law enforcement, and what do you see as some action items moving forward?
The biggest takeaway I would get from this is there's been a lot of discussion about over-policing of African Americans or Black people, and looking at our numbers that we released and how that went out, and what can we do as a department to change that. Not only just by what we're responding to, but also for the traffic stops and for the officer contact initiated. So I think what we can do moving forward, and we've started down that process, is, we've provided the data, we have that data. Obviously there are some data points that we need to try to find how we can collect more data so we can continue to look at this. And then also if we end up contacting, there's a professor, Dr. Chris Barnum with the University of, or St. Ambrose University, and he comes in and he does all the analytical piece for just criminal justice and law enforcement, specifically talking about stops and traffic stops and searches, which I think is probably one of the next steps that we would have to look at as we move forward down this. Another takeaway that I got from this is just exactly what you said. There's a lot of people that want to be involved. They just don't know what that next step is, or how to be involved or be an ally. And so I think that's going to be the next step, is creating that dialogue and continue to have this dialogue. It's not one and done. It's going to continue.
Well, that's a great point. I think that's something we talked about at the city council level, as well as within our entire organization and our management team. This is not an issue we're going to put on the city council agenda one time and walk away from. This is something that it may not be on every agenda for every meeting, but there's going to be a lot of work done behind the scenes in making sure that our organization as a whole is socially just and is equitable to not only our employees but our citizens and our residents and our customers. Talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing now with the NAACP and how you see that relationship growing stronger going down the road.
So this has been a really exciting partnership with Kevin Sanders, who's the Iowa City president, local chapter president of the NAACP. And he, I think back in June, we ended up having a meeting with all area law enforcement, some state representatives, our county attorney, and really just talk about the things that we have already done. And that was to address disparate contact with juveniles, and that was specifically with one of them for fights that were occurring in the schools. And so we worked with the schools, we worked with all of that, the county attorney's office, the juvenile court services, and came up with basically a pre-arrest diversion program. NAACP was really happy and excited to see that, and so when they came and asked what else can we partner with, it's been a great opportunity. And so right now we're looking at how we're going to plan trainings for law enforcement with NAACP. If there's some public events that we can have for how citizens can interact with law enforcement. And it's not just a North Liberty thing. It could be, Coralville, Iowa City, Johnson County events that we're working on planning. The other thing I'm really excited about is their willingness to come in and look at any complaints based on race for either excessive force and or just interaction with law enforcement. And they'll be able to review that. And we're working kind of behind the scenes right now with legal to make sure that we're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, that whatever we show them and vice versa, what knowledge that they have, that we can continue to do what's right and move forward in the best direction as possible. So that's a start. I know once the legal folks get it, it's going to go back and forth quite a few times, but then we'll be able to actually sit down and start that review process. So I'm excited about that.
So if I understand you correctly, the partnership between the police department and the NAACP would be that when we get a complaint that maybe an officer pulled someone over because of their race, the NAACP would help us look into that complaint?
Yes, we currently have a process where we look into it, but again, it's just in-house. And so now NAACP is a civil rights organization. They're willing to spend the time to come to North Liberty and make sure that we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And if there's issues or concerns, then we're going to address those right then and there. So it's going to be a great partnership.
Sounds like it. I'm excited to also use them as a resource, not just with law enforcement. It sounds like they'd be willing to help with citywide trainings. They'd be able to help us better promote jobs so that we can have a better opportunity to increase diversity, again, in all of our departments. So you sound excited. I know I'm excited to have the NAACP more involved in our community, in our organization specifically. Some of the other things that the City Council will be talking about here in the near future won't be directly related to law enforcement. Rather, we'll be looking again at that bigger overall community picture and how we can do better in the social justice area. And some ideas that have been talked about are, for example, a mayor's youth leadership group, more interaction between or more, maybe I should say more discussions or conversations that like we've had with our listening posts. There are a whole list of items that they'll be discussing. Not all of them will be able to be acted on right away. And, one of the things we've talked about with the City Council already is let's pick, a few goals, maybe 3 or 4 off the list and move forward with those and try to, produce some actionable items. So looking forward to that conversation and ultimately moving our community forward in terms of social justice.
The other is the conversations that continue to happen, and it's more of the one-on-one conversations that not only myself but my officers have with members of our community. And some very much expressing the support for law enforcement, some expressing their concerns. So it's been a welcome dialogue that we appreciate, and I know is going to continue moving forward.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. And in fact, I was recently having a conversation with my father, and he showed me a cartoon out of a paper, and the cartoon was a drawing of two neighbors having a discussion, and then one neighbor in his yard had a Black Lives Matter sign, as well as a "We support our police officers." And I think his comment was, if you don't think I can support both, maybe you have the problem. And I think that's a great point. I mean, I think it's not just one or the other. I think we need to all sit down at the table and talk about how we can all do better and be more socially just and find those solutions and prevent these tragedies and these inequalities that are happening in our country.
I completely agree.